Hello everyone and welcome to the online lecture series by Shet Vidya Mandir English High School and Junior College of Science and Commerce. My dear students, we are studying 12th Standard Information Technology Commerce and we are studying chapter number 1 Advanced Web Designing. My dear students, we are going to understand how to design the layout of web pages using CSS. We are also going to learn to design the website, also understand the design of a web form with validation. Students, we can also learn the concept of image map and iframe or else inline frame through this chapter. The aim is to give the skills to create HTML pages or web pages using HTML5 and CSS. My dear students, in the previous video lecture, we studied or tried and understood the new input types and new input elements in HTML5. In 11th standard, we have studied different controls related to form like text, radio, checkbox, submit, reset, select, and text area. These controls are used to collect different kinds of user inputs such as contact details like name, address, single or multiple options from group of options, as well as clearing and submitting data, etc. My dear students, today we are going to do a web form or create a web form which will use various new input elements or the new input types which we use in HTML5. HTML5 has introduced additional form controls which can also be used for validation purpose. My dear students, here you can see a simple web form using various new input types. Yes, my dear students, the coding begins with doc type HTML, which specifies clearly that this is an HTML5 document. As you remember, my dear students, the basic structure of HTML, which says HTML head title, write the title, close the title tag. As you close the title tag, open or close the head tag and begin with the body tag. So here it is HTML head title. Here we have given the title forms in HTML5. Close the title, close head, and start with the body section. My dear students, always remember to create a form, we use the form tag. Once the form tag is started, we can now start with the creation of form using various input fields. Here, the very first one is name. We want the user to type name, and it is understood that name is text, and thus we use input type is equal to text as the input field in which the user will type his or her name. Here we have used the autocomplete attribute. My dear students, if you remember, autocomplete is one of the important input restrictions which specifies whether a form or input field should have autocomplete on or off. So here autocomplete helps the user in completing a particular text. Then we have used BR, that is break, and come to the next line. Here our next input field is email. If you remember, my dear students, in the previous standard while creating an email field we used to use input type is equal to text only. But now in HTML5 we have a specific input type called as email. If you remember, my dear students, here input type is equal to email defines a field for an email address, and thus here we want the user to write the email address. Once again break and come to the next line. The next field is date of inception. Yes, my dear students, date. We have one more input type called as date. If you remember, in the previous video lecture I described the input type date. It defines a date picker with the year, month, and day. So here when we write date, input type is equal to date, it means birthday, of that particular form filler or the user. Here it is a date picker with year, month and day. Once again, break the line, come to the next line, like we press enter. Here, after breaking the line, we put in the new field called as office time. Once again, the new input type here is input type is equal to time. See, my dear students, input type is your main syntax, and every time the type will keep on changing. Here it is input type is equal to date, and here it is input type is equal to time. And this time the name is user time. What does it mean, my dear students? It means here we are defining a control for entering specific time. So here in this field, office time will be put by the user here. Once again, break the line, come on to the next one, and here the next field is number of years completed between 1 to 100. So here we are putting in a range, or we can say here we are using input type is equal to number, because obviously we want the user to type some numbers between 1 to 100, and thus we are setting an attribute or a restriction here which specifies min, that is minimum, and max, that is maximum. If you remember, we have some new input restrictions where min specifies the minimum value for an input field. Here it is minimum 1, and max specifies the maximum value for an input field, that is 100 over here. So 0 to 100, sorry, 1 to 100 is the input type min and maximum which we have specified over here. Moving on to the next line, office phone number. My dear students, here we want number, but specifically we want telephone number. So we'll use the new input type, that is tel, which is to define input fields that should contain only and only telephone numbers. So input type is equal to tel, name is equal to phone, pattern is equal to 0 to 9, 2, 0, 9, 10. If you remember, once again, my dear students, restrictions. Pattern specifies a regular expression to check the input value. So for putting up a phone number, we have specified this particular pattern to the user. Moving further to the next field, add your home page, such as www.something, google.com or yahoo.com. We want a specific URL, and that is why we will use a new input type, that is input type is equal to URL, name is equal to home page. Once again, break the line, and finally we are using an image here, my dear students. Input type is equal to image. This time we are using an image called as submitbutton.png. This is a PNG file, not a JPG file, so be careful while doing the practical, my dear students. Submit button, we are using an image for the submit button here, using the input type is equal to image src. Earlier we used to add with the help of image tag, but now as we are applying it into a form and specifically to the submit button, my dear students, input new type will help us in doing so. Input type is equal to image. With the help of this type, we can add a JPG or a PNG file for our submit button. Finally, we close the form, which means all our new input elements are being used here. Body close and HTML close. So my dear students, in this way we have understood all the new input elements. Let us now move towards our computer screen and try to do it practically. Okay, so my dear students, first step is to open Notepad and then type the following coding which is given in your textbooks. So this is the coding which is completely based on the new input elements which are available, as we just studied about the new input types, or we can say the new input elements. Here I have put the title forms in HTML5, and we'll start with the body tag and the form tag, which is the most essential one. Without the form tag we cannot start the HTML form. Here you can see the new input types which I have used. So for name, input type is equal to text autocomplete. And my dear students, autocomplete is a restriction which is specifying that autocomplete is on or off. Similarly, my dear students, here we have used all the latest input types which we just studied. Remember, all these are the new HTML5 restrictions and validations which are used in HTML5. Here autocomplete on or off we can mention. If we don't mention it, still we will provide the user with the input type text box. Then moving further, we have a new input type, that is email, which is for the user to type an email. The next, my dear students, here is input type date, which is for date of inception, where we are asking for a birthday from the user, where the user will specifically type a date. Then once again break line and we move to office time. Here the user is going to input specified time, and that is named as user time. And then, my dear students, these HTML5 elements are used for typing or for the user to input time over here. We have also given a field to the user for adding number of years between 1 to 100. Here, my dear students, we have used input type is equal to number. Remember, there are two fields, telephone, that is tel for telephone number, and this one is different. This is input type is equal to number. So remember, number is for typing numbers. Here we have used two restriction, min is equal to 1, that is minimum 1, and max, that is 100. So between 1 to 100 we have given a range where the user will put the particular thing. Moving on to office phone number, here we are going to use input type is equal to tel, the new element in HTML5 which is specifically for adding telephone number. Here we have also used a pattern. This pattern attribute is being used so that it specifies a regular expression to check the input values. Then, my dear students, here we have also used a basic pattern of required phone number, and to add a URL we have given the user with the input field called as input type is equal to URL. Input type is equal to URL. The user can input any hyperlink which is like www.google or Yahoo or any other website. URL can be placed here. The most important part here, my dear students, is the input type is equal to image src. So before you execute this practical, you should have a JPG or a PNG file format, or we can say a JPG or PNG file which will act as an image for your submit button. Here I've used input type is equal to image src, and the image which I have in my computer, that is submit button clipart.png. You might not have this file, so you can Google and download any other submit image or submit button image with any other name, whichever name is available with you, whichever image name is available. You write that proper image name here with img image src for the submit button, and then you can write the name over here and the extension properly, give height and width properly so that the image doesn't overlap your web form. And once you are done with this, you can complete the form, you can close body, you can close HTML, and then save the file. Remember, my dear students, for saving an HTML file, you will go to file, click on save as, and the most important part is choosing a particular location and writing proper extension for your HTML file. If you don't write the proper extension, that is .html, you might not get the desired output. So here I choose a particular location and then save my file, and you will easily get the output for your HTML web form using new input type element. Hopefully this video was useful and you will practice this at home. Stay safe, stay connected. Thank you very much.